Thank you, Deputy Director Al-Hassan. And I would have allowed my RMI colleagues to go first, but I'm sure you would not understand as much as you would do after this presentation. So this is like laying the foundation for what would come after. So apologies for calling you up to the stage. Good morning. Permit me to stand on the existing protocol. The MD and the goodwill speakers, the senior special assistant to the president all spoke about the impact that we're hoping to get from the implementation of this program. But before we just get into the technical details, I just wanted to emphasize something. So just put a thought in your head. We deploy mini-grids every now and then. REA developers do it on their own. We give them grants. We have the ref call. So many mini-grids into these communities. And the expected impact is that it's going to better their lives at the end of the day. But imagine with mini-grids, with all these experts in the field here, you would know that comes challenges of, is it sustainable or not? Would it have economic impact on the people? If you end up owning lights and charging your phones, would it have the impact that we're looking to have? That takes us into another thought of saying, okay, we need to ensure that there is productive use. And within the REA, we've made so many efforts. We have a component within the NEP that is providing equipment for productive use, not just agriculture, but everything else. We also have Rural Electricity Users Cooperative Society to ensure communities take ownership, just to sort all of these sustainability issues. But then that comes that economic aspect of their lives. And then we started to think, what could be that aspect that if you touch it within every rural community in Nigeria, there would be that impact and lives would be bettered. And it was a no-brainer that would be agriculture, because it may differ when you go to the south where they grow cocoa and palm kernels, and then you go to the north where they do grains like maize and millets and so on. But at the end of the day, they're all agriculture. So that's the thing for us. We want to make sure that all the solutions we deploy translates to bettering lives, and that has been echoed by the MD already and the speakers that spoke after him. So, Energizing Agriculture Program. So we came up with some key objectives to make sure that this impact is felt, and without wasting too much time doing feasibility studies, doing this and that. So it's just projects that are gonna just kickstart and happen within a few months. So the first thing we thought about is how do we're going to accelerate deployment of agriculture electrification interventions, but by doing a careful approach of convening teams of experts. You can bring an equipment provider, you can bring a mini-grid developer, you can bring somebody who is good at business modeling, you can bring an investor, and then they sit down and see how do we make sure that the mini-grids that we already have within REA, outside REA, within Nigeria, all over, are used productively. And these teams sit down and they go through the whole value chain, from producing electricity to situating them, to the business models to adopt, to how you bring in investments, to how you retrofit equipment and so on, to come up with these solutions that will be applied in mini-grid sites. But then from these solutions, we're trying to scale, because we're going to test like 5 mini-grid sites or 20 mini-grid sites, and then scale them to about 200 communities. And this is all to say, how would they translate, how would they behave when you apply them across different communities with different mini-grid owners and so on. And then one other thing which is key, and which I think the group here would help us immensely, is trying to create this pipeline of project, like the MD said earlier, and trying not to reinvent the wheel, again, re-echoing the MD. We're trying to look at how existing infrastructure, existing equipment, existing establishments are revived, if I may say. You can go to a processing center that has, that you would see has been unmanned for like 5-10 years because, well, diesel is expensive, these machines need maintenance and so on, electricity is costly, there's actually no electricity there, generators are faulty and so on, and you'd know that REA, being an expert in providing electricity, would provide that enabler to just revive that facility. So we're trying to create that pipeline of project across the value chain of agriculture and develop some of them. And at the end of the day, all these solutions that we're trying to demonstrate, we're trying to see that they don't stop at that pilot stage, and they go beyond where the market would expand and scale them by itself. So from this objectives, we came up with 3 key components. The first one is the stakeholder collaboration and scaling. That's where we would identify energy agricultural projects through these working groups, because we've utilized the key ministries of power and agri, some of the agencies under them. We've spoken to some river basin development authorities because they do some irrigation projects. We've spoken to Agricultural Commodities Forum, where they have large clusters of farms and they're trying to bring equipment. We've spoken to the Appeals and the Fadama projects, where they have some of this infrastructure laid all over the country. We're talking to agriculture extension and research institutes to see how they can better educate us, because we want to take a careful approach and want all the studies and all the researches that have been done. And with that information, that's where we are hoping to create this pipeline of projects. And it will be easy when you have a project to just go into the development phase. So with this second component is where we locate the data. This data comes in from all these establishments, and we refine them, and it would help us in implementing the first component and the third component that would come to later. And that third component, I wouldn't dwell too much on it because Scarlett and team would not have too much to say. The RMI team is implementing component 3 with the REA, and that's where the accelerator projects are going to test and debug all these use cases and come up with business models and so on. Go ahead. So back to component 1. You want to do collaboration and scaling. The first thing is we identify stakeholders, like I mentioned, key ministries, key agencies, programs, and so on. And then we meet, which is yet to happen and would happen soon. We meet and then we explain this and we start surfacing all these early collaboration opportunities. And then we gather data and refine them. And then with those data, we go to these sites. And one thing to emphasize here is, and I've spoken to a few people who says REA or other agencies will just come and they'll get data from us and would never hear from them again. And this is why this approach is different, because we're trying to do the working group so that all the activities of getting the data, refining the data, visiting the sites to verify them, and so on will be done in collaboration with the same people forming the working group. So if we're going to a site nominated by FADAMA, we'd expect that they'll give us enumerators who will take us to the sites, will take all the data that we need, we'll come back, and then from all these exercises, would shortlist some of these projects that we think are viable, because of course not everything we would expect would be viable to be developed. So would hold like a workshop or a boot camp or a retreat where we bring in again these key people and sit down and say, okay, this is what we've done so far. Are you confident that we can go ahead and get to the design phase? And then we engage communities. We're already talking with UNDP and other development partners who are trying to come into these projects and co-fund some of these exercises with us. But then we would want to go beyond developing just 20 sites. So we would invite investment community to come in and see that these projects are actually viable, and we're making a very good business case for them to be developed, and then would implement and disseminate results for future use. So project development, I've spoken about this, but in literal terms, you bring in a working group, and this is the composition, some of them, agencies, programs, cooperative societies, partners, wherever they are. And The next thing you can do is you get data, but you want to categorize this data into, is it production where the immediate intervention would be maybe irrigation systems and so on, or is it processing where you would need rice milling and threshers and so on, or maybe storage where cold storage is. I'm sure people from Plateau and so on would understand what cold storage would mean to all these perishable goods that they produce, and they would have to sell within 2-3 days, else it would go rotten. And then even access to market. So with this categorization, we would start peeling out the projects that we feel would fill in the spaces, and that's the irrigation, the milling, the peelers, the shellers, and cold storages, and so on. So this literally describes what we're trying to do, and from there, it's just about identifying each community and what intervention to do and just funding it to develop the projects. So accelerator projects, again, Scarlett and team would talk more on this, but imagine you have a mini-grid towards the end, and then you have an enterprise development towards the right end there, where you have appeals and farmers and their likes. If you want to have productive use of energy at the end, you know that there are some key elements that are missing, and these are the dotted ones inside. You would want a viable technology, and where efficient equipment are provided and so on, and you would want the best business model for that intervention, so that it would be, the investment is secure, there are no risks and so on, and at the end of the day you can actually have the productive use of energy. I wouldn't dwell on this too much. The next one. So how does this tie with REA projects that we're going to do? And the ED technical services will talk on what REA is doing on agriculture. But imagine there is this Energizing Agriculture Program, and if all that we're saying becomes successful, and we have this project pipeline towards the left, at the end of the day, you sift through them and you categorize some of them to be mini-grid solution, some are standalone, maybe irrigation systems, some are, well, equipments need to be replaced and so on. And then you go towards the right, where you have REA programs such as you have the REF, you have the NEP, Rural Electrification Fund, Nigerian Electrification Project, and so on, where they actually fund some of these projects. What we're trying to do is, when we create this pipeline of projects, we want to go beyond what partners or investors would fund you, because it may have a timeline and we want this to last the ages. So we want it to become a tradition within REA, such that on an annual basis, maybe, I wouldn't want to jump the gun with the management here sitting, but such that we can be able to pair this. With a mini-grid solution, we know that REF does mini-grids. With a equipment provision, we know that NEP provides equipment. With mini-grid, we know that, with standalone, we know that the programmatic budgeting is going to do standalone irrigation, so that beyond what we're doing now, beyond the solutions that we're going to do in the pilot, we can say that, okay, on a yearly basis, we know where to fix all these project pipelines and all this research and feasibility we've done, to where we actually know that there could be funding to be utilized. So this is where we wanted to have these linkages with REA to embed this. And the MD spoke about institutionalizing the program, so that it would last beyond the Mohammeds and the Scarletts and the rest of us, so that within REA there is an office that is doing this continually and will last for a very long time. So at the end of the day, you've done feasibility, you've done pilots, you've done very good business models, you've done monitoring and evaluation of these projects, which would inform on a very good business case. Who would not want to invest? It's agriculture, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed.